Hey there. Today I want to tell you about the thunderbird or the elwah dragon, and we'll even dissect an owl pellet, which I think you will enjoy. There's a reason why we say the owl, because the elwah is the name of the thunderbird or the owl dragon or the brown dragon or any of the other type of dragons of that particular nature. Thunderbird is the name of this huge giant bird that is supposed to be part of the Native American culture idea of dragons. So I'm going to spend some time talking to you a little bit about the elwah and the thunderbird, which are considered to be interchangeable. We'll talk about the owl a little bit. We'll talk about the owl digestive system, and then we'll take a look inside of an owl pellet. So I'm glad that you're here. So let's get started. Really fast, the thunderbird, or the elwah dragon as we call it, is one of those elusive creatures that is actually common in North America. And they are part of the, in a sanctuary area of our part of the United States, found in the Native American area and around that particular section. They are very much not common because they are very distinctive, and it very much looks like an owl or elwah owl. There is a thunderbird dance that is done, or the owl dance that is done as kind of a sacred dance of the Native American tribes. And there's even this lovely use of the elwah or the owl in the totem poles. I think you'll enjoy that a lot. There's two tales I'm going to tell you. One is about the how the elwah came to be part of the creation myth, and another one is about how the owl is pretty awesome in and of itself. So I'm going to tell you the tale of the thunderbird, and I'm going to tell you the story of the owl as well. So in our book, which is called the Dragonopedia, written by William O'Connor, who is a naturalist turned artist, he discusses the elwah dragon in a lot of detail here. The elwah dragon is one of the most distinctive members of the Dracorexia family. The broad face and short muzzle that give the dragon its uncanny resemblance to an owl has the same function as its avian relative. The broad cone of the dragon's face acts as a sound amplifier, focusing subtle noise into the dragon's ear canals. Where most great dragons rely upon sight and smell to hunt, the elwah brown dragon hunts by sound. And the fog-shrouded coast of the Pacific Northwest make hunting difficult. The dragon uses its high, piercing screech to echolocate itself and its relationship to its prey. So this is one dragon who uses its sense of hearing and its sense of smell to find its creatures. And when we talk about the owl in more detail, we'll also find out that the owl has incredible hearing, sight, and also an incredible sense of smell. They're also not very discriminate eaters. They will eat whatever they can find, just like this dragon do. The behavior of the elwah dragon was discovered by a Western naturalist. It allowed the brown dragon to remain relatively untouched by human interference for most of its history, creating a healthy habitat for the animal. And there's what the elwah dragon looks like. It's got the short beak-like snout of the elwah dragon, allows it to hunt by sound far better than by sight. Ranging as far north as Alaska and as far south as the Pacific coast of Oregon, the brown dragon has been sighted as far south as San Francisco and as far east as Seattle. Falling under protected status for most of the 20th century, the elwah brown dragon is second only to the Icelandic white in population. Believe that over 5,000 elwah brown dragons are alive today, living off the abundant food supplies of the Pacific fish and whale population. And again, that goes back to the thunderbird story. If you look at the egg, it looks very much like a pellet, as we'll talk about what a pellet's all about in just a moment. The broad head of the elwah dragon has a unique design similar to that of the strigiform order of birds commonly known as owls, and it helps to focus its sound. The chicks look very much like their parent, and the surface is uneven, and it is spotted. The hatchlings are about 2 to 6 hatchlings, and they can fly pretty much from birth. They hunt for seals and porpoises and that live along the Puget Sound and the Strait of Juan de Fuca. And killer whales are also part of the thunderbird story. Although the elwah dragon has been known by the Native American tribes of the Pacific Northwest for millennia, the first European account of this dragon took place in 1778. Captain Cook's third circumnavigation of the world brought his ship, the HMS Resolution, to Vancouver Island for over a month that year. The ship's artist, John Webber, documented the dragon for the National Society of London for improving natural knowledge, and this encounter gave the dragon its first moniker, Webber's Dragon. In 1805, Lewis and Clark arrived in the Pacific Northwest. It was from the accounts of this expedition that the dragon officially classified as elwah in 1823. Early naturalists believed and learned that the dragon was referred to by Native Americans as the Thunderbird and played an important role in their spiritual celebration. Thunderbird represents the awesome power of nature and a respect for life, revered to as the Pacific Northwest. They also have a word for it where they call it the kunaksawa, and it is able to shapeshift into human form. The relative isolation and abundance of the elwah dragon made the great beast a favorite for American and European sports hunters. In 1909, former President Theodore Roosevelt shot 3 brown dragons during an expedition to the region. The president was an ardent supporter of the Elwah National Dragon Sanctuary, which was dedicated in 1917. A little fact mixed with fiction there. We do know that there is a place that is part of that area that has a park. In 1923, the Canadian government created the Canadian National Elwah Preserve, and today the International Elwah Dragon Sanctuary is the only international dragon preserve. In 1982, the Elwah National Dragon Sanctuary control transferred to the Elwah Tribal Council, making it the only national park under the jurisdiction of a Native American tribe. And there's the Elwah for you. The nest itself looks very much like its avian counterpart. It will care for its young until they're old enough to leave the lair. The male has a broad harbor seal to eat with his young. And the wingspan is about 85 feet across. It is short-tailed, and it aids in precision in flying, so it is aerodynamic. You can find them basically in this part of the world, in this part of the United States. And they may be called the brown dragon, the owl dragon, the thunderbird, lightning serpent, kunaksawa, Webber's dragon, and the Salish dragon. And they're found in the Salish area. So that is the elwah. So really quickly, I'd like to take a minute and just share the story of the thunderbird with you, which is what we also call this particular dragon. And in answer to the loveliness that makes the thunderbird, it's definitely a very popular creature in and of that particular tribe. In the classroom, you'll also get the links to watch the dance. You'll get the links to read the article, and you'll get the links to take a look at all of the loveliness that makes the thunderbird such a popular animal in relationship to this particular section. Hope you enjoy it. So really quickly, I'm going to switch over to my Dragons and Mythological Creatures book. And inside of here, we've got the Thunderbird in all of its detail. One of the stories about the Thunderbird is that it was capable of hunting seals or porpoises, and they are responsible for the getting rid of those particular creatures, decimating their population. Maybe not, maybe possible, depending on how you believe dragons to have been part of that process. But the Thunderbird is a revered dragon because it's not dangerous as long as you don't mess with it, and it's not going to hurt anything except for things that it's for prey. It does have the ability to shoot lightning out of its eyes, and it is responsible for weather control. And there's the Thunderbird for you. The eyes, each time the Thunderbird opens its eyes, bolts of lightning flash across the sky. Its head, it has a second head sprouts from the Thunderbird's back with its chest, and both are equipped with viciously hooked beaks for taking on their enemies and those types of things that they don't want to mess with. It can carry the entire lake of water on its back, and it releases the water in drop-down downpours. The wings are strong, feathery, and they're as long as a canoe paddles, and when they flap, it sends bolts of thunder through the sky. Its feet are curved with talon tips to be able to take their prey, and they are reminiscent of the vulture or the giant eagle. They're found in Puget Sound and around that area, and they are from the Native American population, the Inuit people in the Arctic to the Aztecs in Mexico. There have been giant birds throughout history that they have kind of revered and said to be the Thunderbird. I'm in Pennsylvania, and believe it or not, in my part of the world, in Lancaster, there's even been sightings of the Thunderbird. It's kind of fun to think about. Is it actually the Thunderbird? We don't know for sure, but we have a very large Native American population here. And so, of course, the Thunderbird is revered just where I am around my area as well. So do we have any porpoises? Not off the coast of Pennsylvania. There is no water near us, but there have definitely been some up to the north of us and to the south of us. This gigantic two-headed bird of prey is known by Native American tribes to bring thunder and lightning to the skies. Lightning bolts shoot from its eyes, storm clouds are carried on its wings, and entire lakes of water on its back make torrential downpours. Yet in Native American mythology, the Thunderbird means different things to different tribes. In some tribes, it's super scary. In other tribes, it's the bringer of life. Some tribes believe that the Thunderbird is even the great creator spirit that made the heavens and the earth. And Native tribes in Africa and Australia have similar traditions to the Thunderbird, no doubt inspired by the sight of eagles or vultures circling high up in the sky. And there was a bird that was recently discovered that is probably has wingspan about half the size of the Thunderbird. We know it to be either the great heron or the really big turkey vulture. They have some pretty big wings. So could it be based on a real creature? Absolutely, absolutely. The Nuka people of Vancouver Island off the coast of British Columbia call the Thunderbird Tooch. To them, it was the sole survivor of 4 giant birds that preyed on whales. By turning into a whale, the god Quikatak tricked the birds into attacking him. He lured 3 to their death as they dived deep, but the survivor flew to the heavens. In the tales of the Quileute people of the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State, the Thunderbird and the killer whale are deadly enemies, like in this picture here. They once fought a fierce battle, shaking the mountains and uprooting trees, creating vast treeless plains. So another dragon that battled with another creature to create the plains or explain why there was areas that don't have any trees. And the Thunderbirds are part of the belief systems that were held by many different groups of Native Americans, and they either live in the sky or in the remote mountain caves. And here's the picture of the Thunderbird carrying off that whale. Many Native American tribes claim to have seen the Thunderbird. And in South Dakota, they believe it has left huge footprints. The prints are 25 miles apart in the area known as Thunder Tracks and near the source of the St. Peter's River. And some stories say that the Thunderbird lives in a mountainous cave, burying its food in the dark hole in the ice. Hunters come too close, it rolls huge humps of light ice down the mountainside to scare them away. So this is one bird you do not want to mess with. But it goes back with the connection of dragons and birds as being the possibility that huge giant birds may have triggered the idea of dragons. That's the Thunderbird. And we know that the elwah and the Thunderbird are also called the same, one and the same. And of course, that brings us to the idea that perhaps they were based on giant swoop owls or barn owls or those types of creatures, since they are pretty much prevalent all over the United States. I'd like to take a moment and share the Thunderbird story with you. True Canadian mythology, legends, and folklore of the Thunderbird, which is a mystical creature of the Northwest Coast, indigenous myth and mythology for cats. Get nice and big for you. So if you look at the Thunderbird, it looks different from the one that we had in the book. He's more of a spirit type of creature, which kind of goes with the idea that perhaps that the Thunderbird, in this case, may have been a reference to the great creator spirit. Make him nice and big for you to look at up close. Here we go. If you take a look at the picture of the Thunderbird, he definitely has lightning coming out of his wings, lightning coming out of his eyes, and then this is supposed to depict him flying into the sky, and huge claps of thunder occur whenever he is present. The thunderbird is a mythical bird that is well known among indigenous tribes who inhabit and live in different parts of Canada. And mythical refers to something that is from myth or mythology. Mythology is made up of stories that are from different religions or cultures. No one's sure if the myths are true, but the stories are often used to teach lessons or explain things in nature. You don't really know? You can find a myth about it, right? If you look at this guy, he definitely looks very much like perhaps the idea of a combination of a couple of different creatures together, which kind of goes with that 4 birds together that we talked about with the other story. The myth says the thunderbird has a spirit of nature, granting it control over thunder and lightning. And it's this huge bird that flies in the sky. And if you look, it has the face of an eagle. The thunderbird is so named because it's believed the bird has a spirit of nature, granting it control over the weather, specifically thunder and lightning. This bird is supposed to be able to make thunder by merely flapping its wings and is said to be able to produce lightning from its eyes. Likewise, it is also able to bring rain, hail, typhoons, and other weather conditions when it wants to. And it can shift into human form and easily back and forth. Despite variations in the stories from different tribes, the indigenous people believe that this giant bird was sent by the gods to protect humanity. The thunderbird is a sacred and respected culture in the folklore. Stories passed down from one culture to another, from one generation to another. And if you look at the totem pole here, the thunderbird pole at Brockton Point Stanley Park in Vancouver, Canada, the thunderbird is kind of in the middle of the totem pole. Pretty powerful animal. Even people who do not believe the thunderbird has the power to manipulate the weather have considered this giant species of bird may have lived millions of years ago. Very possible that it was part of the Kestacoaltis, or the type of a big, huge avian pterosaur. There have been multiple sightings of the magnificent bird over the centuries, hundreds of years. In addition to the thunderbird appearing in indigenous stories in Canada, a creature with similar characteristics is told in the folklore of other indigenous tribes who inhabit different areas of the continent of North America. So what does it look like? Each one of the cultures has a different idea, but they all are slightly the same. There are some common descriptions of the thunderbird in stories indigenous people tell, while others' descriptions differ only slightly. Some of the descriptions are physical, what the thunderbird looks like, while others focus on the characteristics of its behavior. It's agreed that the thunderbird does not act or look like ordinary birds. Thunderbird is said to be a massive with gigantic wings. In fact, it is so massive that even one of its feathers would be too large to fit into a quiver if the feathers were not folded in half. And if you look at this guy, he looks very much like the elwah dragon that we talked about earlier. He definitely has that beak-like face, got those scales, maybe the face of an eagle. Got some good stuff going on there. The eyes of the thunderbird glow and are fiery. The teeth inside its beak. Bird also has large and strong talons. Some legends say that these talons are so big and strong that the thunderbird can catch a whole killer whale up from the ocean. Despite the description, the thunderbird is also said to be very beautiful. Because their feathers are so bright and colorful, they make them pleasing to the eye. And there's the story of the thunderbird with the porpoise, or killer whale. In addition to its massive size and strength, it's agreed that the thunderbird has special powers. It is so powerful, it can create thunderstorms simply by flapping its wings. Some legends say that its eyes can blast out lightning. The storms it can create are so fierce that they can destroy a village, if the bird so desires to do so. Thunderbird can travel great distances with just a flap of its wings, and the flapping sound it makes while in flight booms like thunder. So they needed something to describe where weather comes from. Why not? The thunderbird can also change its shape by removing its wings like it has a cloak, or tilting its head as if it were removing a mask. Then the bird can come to look like an ordinary human going about his or her daily life. Since the thunderbird can act like a messenger when necessary, it will live with humans before it chooses to return to its shape as a bird. For this reason, there were some tribes that believed that the thunderbird was one of their ancestors. The Thunderbird can assume various roles. In some folklore, the Thunderbird was seen as a protector. It fights creatures in order to protect people. The Thunderbird can also take the role of a judge. It does so by punishing those who commit crimes. There's a protector, and there's the judge. There's a couple different stories from indigenous people. They all have the same idea that they all come from the creation, or they could be their ancestors. One of the legends of the Thunderbird comes from the Algonquin people. The Algonquins are from the southern area of the province of Quebec and the eastern part of the province of Ontario. They were known to inhabit areas along sources of water, waterfalls, rivers, and lakes. According to the Algonquin people, the Thunderbird was their ancestor, and they believe that the bird has been around since the beginning of creation. Their legends talk about the dangerous great horned snake. Another snake worshipping idea, right? This group of indigenous people believe that while the Thunderbird was the ruler of the upper world, the snake ruled the underworld. It was the role of the Thunderbird to use lightning to protect human beings from the dangers of the underworld. So if we think about the Thor mythology that I told you before about Nihog and the Jormungandr, got the same idea of in the tree of life, you've got Nihog, who is at the bottom, nibbles on the roots of the tree, and you've got Jormungandr, who's in the water, and you've got this eagle with Nihog and the top of the tree of life, nibbles. When you get through the roots of Yggdrasil, Ragnarok will come about. Same thing happens with the idea of Jormungandr come to the surface. He's a huge sea serpent. If he comes to the surface, Ragnarok will come about, and the end of the world will come about. The same thing happened here, where you have the protector at the top and you've got the snake at the bottom. Always have to be protected from the snake. And as we know from research, humans, the great imagination is one of the most powerful tools we have, but humans have this innate fear of snakes. So why not a huge snake-like creature that has to be our enemy and be protected by something like a bird or an eagle? Eagles are wisdom, fly up in the sky. And again, with a Nihog story, you've got Nihog eating the tree, you've got the eagle at the top, and then you've got the squirrel that runs between the two of them, trading insults back and forth. So again, another story of the bird. Birds and snakes are enemies, and in this case, it fits. And there's even a group of birds that will actually take blind snakes to raise their babies. Kind of an interesting thought. Symbiotic relationship, but also maybe that hatred goes a little bit more than skin deep. Other stories are unanimously popular. Other stories about the Thunderbird vary across different tribes. The Ojibwe tribe, for example, talks about how the Thunderbird was created by their legendary hero known as Nanabozo. And there's Nanabozo. Did you know that the Anishinaabe people is the term given to different indigenous groups of people who live both in Canada and the US? The term itself means original people. The culture, values, and folklore people from the different tribes of the Anishinaabe people are very common. These are the most of the tales that we know. The Ojibwe tribe, which is also known by the names of the Saulteaux, Ojibwe, or Chippewa, come from the Anishinaabe people. There are many Ojibwe people in Canada. In fact, they're the second largest group of indigenous people in the entire country of Canada. And this is in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada. Traditionally, the tribe lived in the forests of the southern region of the provinces of Ontario and Quebec. They also inhabited parts of the north of the Great Lakes. One city, Thunder Bay, which is near Lake Superior in Ontario, got its name from the legend of the Thunderbird. The name Thunder Bay was taken from the translation, which means Thunderbird Bay. Anamiki weekweed, which in their language means Thunderbird Bay. There's a picture of Thunderbird Bay. According to the legend, the Thunderbird built a nest in the Nor'wester Mountains on the summit of Mount McKay. And the mountains are just to the southwest of Thunder Bay. The tribes say that the Thunderbird is a protector who fights spirits while underwater. The thunderbird comes to land to stay with other birds until autumn, when the spirits are supposed to be most dangerous. When it is certain that everyone in the tribe is safe, the bird migrates south. Additionally, the tribe believes that the thunderbird will punish people who harm others, and it is capable of giving out harsh justice. Therefore, the thunderbird is seen as a creature who is to be revered or respected. Because the thunderbird can punish people for bad behavior, the fear of punishment is believed to deter some people from being disobedient. Did you know? In Canada, the Sioux are believed to have lived in the western parts of Manitoba and Ontario, along with the eastern part of Saskatchewan before the War of 1812. The War of 1812 was fought between the US and the United Kingdom. After this war, the Sioux became close to their territory in the US. Nevertheless, they never gave up their territory in Canada, so they're pretty big, even in Canada. The thunderbird can also be found in the folklore of the Sioux people. The Sioux people are also known by the name Lakota or Dakota, but these two names have the same meaning. There just happens to be difference in pronunciation, and again, that pronunciation varies across tribes. The Sioux have moved around many parts of North America. Therefore, Sioux people live in different areas of what is now Canada and the US. According to the folklore of the Sioux, the thunderbird was regarded as a very good and honorable bird. It took great care in making sure that people were protected from the Unkahila. The Unkahila were very harmful reptiles that would prey on humans. Without the help of the thunderbird, there was no way that people would have survived these terrible reptilian monsters. The thunderbird is also known among the indigenous people of the Inuit from the northern regions of Canada. In the traditional stories of these people, they were extraordinary birds which were called Surdinalnaks. These birds were quite powerful, and they could often be seen hunting seals. It was said that they were able to kill an adult male effortlessly. Again, that connection of water and land, right? Or water and sky. There are other stories about a gigantic bird which lived near the lower Yukon River. Apparently, this ferocious bird hunted caribou, and on a couple of occasions was responsible for the deaths of some people. The Blackfoot, an indigenous group of people who came from the Canadian prairies, tell of the thunderbird in their folklore. They refer to it as the mighty thunderbird as Omaksipauchow. In eastern Canada, the thunderbird is also present in traditional folklore. In the province of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, the Passamaquoddy, the Micmac, and the Maliset all have stories about the magnificent bird, and they call it the Kulona. Indigenous people known as the Montagnais and the Naskapi, who live in Labrador from the province Newfoundland and Labrador. Canada's most eastern provinces called the creature Simikko. So how did it come about? They needed a way to describe how things were happening. So this one is about the bark of the tree and how the birch tree got the marks from the thunderbird. Many stories are told in indigenous cultures. One such story is from the Ojibwe people and tells how burns came to be on a birch tree. Now, if you think about a birch tree, it looks like it's has burns on it. Well, we like to describe where things come from, so that's what they did. The story goes as such. Once upon a time, there was a little boy by the name of Wanaza Bohozo. Remember, I told you their famous leader. One cold winter's day, he heard his grandmother call out to him. Wanahaba Hozo ran to her side. It was then that his grandmother told him that she could not afford to be able to cook any food. It was very cold, and they had no fire. However, his grandmother knew where fire could be found. She told Wanahaza Bohozu that the thunderbird, who was in the west, had fire. Then she asked Wanabahozu to go and fetch it from the thunderbird. Wanabahozu got ready right away. Instead of just going as himself, however, Wanabahozu made himself look like a little rabbit or wobos. Off he went toward the west in search of the fire. After traveling for a while, Wanabahozu found the place where the Thunderbird lived. Wanabahozu told the Thunderbird that he was lost and cold. Then he asked if he would be able to come into the Thunderbird's home to get warm. He promised that he would not stay long. The Thunderbird invited him inside. Once inside the Thunderbird's home, Wanabahozu noticed the fire right away. He decided that he would steal fire from the Thunderbird. When the Thunderbird was focusing on something else, Wanabahozu went to the fire, got it on his back, and fled the house. And if you know anything about Greek mythology, Prometheus did the same thing to Zeus. It didn't go well for Prometheus. It's probably not going to go well for Wanabahozu either. When the Thunderbird realized what had happened, he became very angry. He flew after Wanabahozu and hurled flashes of lightning at him. Wanabahozu was no match for the Thunderbird, for he got exhausted in no time. He frantically cried out for somebody to help him. It was then that the birch tree came to Wanabahozu's rescue. The birch tree told Wanabahozu to hide behind it. Wanabahozu, still disguised as a little rabbit, ran and took cover under the birch tree. In the meantime, the Thunderbird kept hurling out flashes of lightning. Although the lightning flashes did not hit Wanabahozu, they did not miss the birch tree. With every flash of lightning, the bark of the birch tree got hit. Before too long, there were many dark burn marks on the birch tree bark. That is why the birch tree has these marks, and to this day, they are still there. And of course, the Thunderbird continues in other cultures as well. The legend of the Thunderbird is not limited to indigenous groups in Canada. There are similar legends in the US, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Many people in different places mention the Thunderbird in some way or another in their legend. Got to be based on something, right? The end. So I hope you've enjoyed our story of the Thunderbird. And now, let's take a look at an owl pellet. So really quickly, I need to kind of explain to you what happens to the food that the owl eats and how it becomes a pellet. We're going to look at a barn owl pellet, which is specifically collected for this purpose. And barn owl pellets have been chosen because they have owls that swallow their prey whole, small rodents, birds, and everything else that they can get a hold of, which results in the pellet. And they contain the skeleton of their prey, sometimes complete skeleton. Pellets begin forming within the digestive tract of an owl as soon as the prey is swallowed. Enzyme juices break it down, the tissue and the prey, but it can't do so with the hair and feathers and beaks and claws. It can't do that. They're undigested. Depending upon the prey, the undigested portions may include beaks, claws, scales, or insect exoskeletons. In my last class, I found a small head of a vole. So who knows what we're going to find. They are then covered with fur or the mat of whatever they ate. And it doesn't have much nutritional value, so the owl spits it out. Predatory mammals such as bobcats and wolves have teeth that grind up the bones. Owls don't have the ability to do that. So they hit the digestive system, they're covered up with this material, and they form a pellet surrounded with the hair or feathers of what they ate. And the pellet is then orally expelled or spit up or gagged out of the owl's mouth. And you can find anything in this particular pellets. Now, in my classes so far, I've discovered 2 voles, skulls, 4 beaks, 3 claws, a whole bunch of small little bones, and a lot of really cool stuff. Eggshells, other things. But since they've been collecting for this particular process, they found that the barn owls that they've revealed since 2017 have found 1,407 mice, 143 rats, 7 bats, 5 young rabbits, 375 house sparrows, 23 starlings, 54 other birds, 2 lizards, 174 frogs, 25 moths, and 52 crickets. And these are all the prey that an owl will eat. They're not discriminate, which means that they will eat whatever they can find. And if it's smaller than them, they will probably eat it. And there's some of the pictures of the prey that we may find in our owl pellet. So what we're going to do is we are going to take a look at what makes a pellet, and then we're going to do an unpelleting of the pellet. Owls have very different digestive systems than we do. They have the same esophagus that we do, but they have a glandular stomach and a muscular stomach. We only have a muscular stomach. First, they eat the prey. It's positioned head first in the beak. They don't have teeth to chew it, and they can tear it into pieces, but usually they'll swallow it whole. They don't have teeth. The bone can't be ground up, and so they pass through the body completely. And then it's broken down by chemicals in the body. Muscular parts in the stomach prevent the bones and hair from going any further, but they allow the digested fleshy portion to enter the intestine. And when the nutrients are collected and sent to the rest of the body, they are the proteins, the carbohydrates, the vitamins, the water, all the things that the owl needs to stay healthy. So the second step is it's swallowed, passes through the esophagus, just like our windpipe, and is the glandular stomach. Enzymes break it down, and then it passes into the muscular stomach. And some of the digested material enters into the intestine is not needed, so then it comes out of their vent later on. And the pasty white material known as urea is what's combined. That's their urine. Just like bearded dragons and other lizards have urea, that's what's passed out of their vent. The bones, hair that were left in the stomach must then be taken out or spit up, expelled out of the body, and it's done through the mouth. Basically, they are gagging out what they don't need. Since the bones are no longer surrounded by flesh, they could get stuck in the throat. To prevent this, the stomach packs the bones and the hair, and the slick, soft package is then regurgitated as what we call an owl pellet. Nutrients are absorbed in the body, hair is pressed around the bones of the prey, and then the pellet is orally expelled and waste is excreted through the vent. So they will poop and they will pee at the same time. Their feces and their urea are combined together. That white stuff that you see is urea. And that is the owl stomach. Kind of fun to think about. Very efficient process, right? Let's take a look at what's inside of one. Again, this is not necessary. If you don't want to watch this, I understand. You can certainly turn off your camera at this point in time. And we're going to dissect the pellet. So I have some materials here. I have a paper plate. I have some gloves. I have my tweezers, and I have my small digging tool. Unfortunately, the way that the pellets are designed, I'll have to remove some of the outside of the pellet before I can get into the inside of it. Once I get into the inside of it, after I get past, basically it's a fur ball. When I get past the part that's the fur, we'll start looking at the bones and things that we see inside the pellet. I've done this activity 3 times, and the bigger the pellet seems to be the more interesting things that we're finding. So we're going to go with the medium-sized pellet today. And I'm going to just pull the bones out that I see, and we can identify them once they're dried and bleached out with the chart that I'll put in the classroom for you. All right, opening it up. No, the foil is not part of the owl pellet. And there's what we would know to be the pellet. Looks really much like that elwah bone what the baby owls are found in, doesn't it? Or the elwah dragon's youth. It does kind of look like that, doesn't it? Try a little bit, make it bigger. Now on the outside of the pellet, what you will discover is bits of branches or rock or hay or grasses or those kind of things. It tells us where the owl lived or what part of the world you could probably find him in. If there's a lot of grasses or a lot of hay, he was most likely in an area that had grasses and hay, and bits of pieces of twigs and that kind of thing. Those are all kind of there. So that's what you would be able to figure out where they live by inspecting that area. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull it apart just a little bit to get inside of it. And once I'm inside of it, we'll be able to start to see some of the bones that are found here, and the beaks and the claws, and some other items that we might be finding. Ooh, this guy was a hungry guy. Look at all that good stuff. And again, it's a lot easier to take them out and then bleach them before we try to identify them, unless we can figure out what they are right from the start. Right there, we have some right on the top. There's a bone. Yeah, there's awesome looking bones there. Very efficient way of protecting what you're eating, huh? Get in there a little bit more. There's another piece of a bone. Woo, look at that. There's another part of another bone. I think we just found some eggshells. Those are probably small bird bones, or maybe small reptiles, or small creatures of that nature. This guy's a big one. Oh my, we have a whole skull. Woo! That's not a skull, that is a claw. Look at that. A lot of eggshells in here too. Woo, look at that. Another claw. Another talon. This guy must have been having a jackpot here. He must have eaten an entire nest of animals here. Got a lot of bird shells. There are a lot of talons. Look at all them eggshells. Woo! Look at that. Oh, there's a little it's a skull of something. All them eggshells. Look at that. The claw. Another piece of an eggshell. He had a feast. Look at that leg bone there. Wow, right? Woo! Got some great stuff in here. We may even find a skull or two. Lots of tiny little bones here. Some bigger bones. It'll be so cool when they're all done. We can figure out, oh, there's an invertebrate something. It's like another claw. I imagine that this guy attacked a nest of some kind. Small little feet. Small little bones. It'll be interesting when we pull up the when they're all dried out, and we can use the booklet to see what we're looking at. Another bone. Lots and lots of bones here. Look at that leg bone. Woo! Look at that leg bone there. Woo! Look at those. It's cool to find an entire beak and an entire, no beaks, but we did find an entire leg there. And most likely we've definitely found an entire claw. Another piece, something in there. Really quick, I want to pull that out. There's another small little, tease that out a little bit. I think we found a skull. We did. We found a skull. Wonder what kind of a skull it is. It'll be interesting when we take it apart. That's a shell. Or a skull. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at the list as far as what we're looking at here. There's some small little bone-like pieces in here. Ooh, look at that bone. Woo! Awesomeness in the box. All kinds of fun stuff in here. There's another skull. If that's there's another small bone. This guy must have attacked a nest. There's like all kinds of beaks and other things in here. All their small little bones. So that's the owl pellet. Open up this guy a little bit more. Pull this apart. Ooh, look at that. Lots of little bones there. Another talon. Another claw. We've got an entire leg. Bottom of 2 talons together. Pull that apart a little bit. Pull that little bone out of there. We've hit the jackpot with claws. Talon pieces. And once I get all these cleaned up, we'll identify them. There's like 3 of them in a row. Woo! There's an entire piece here. Look at that. There's another big one. I think that's a wing. Probably a starling or a small bird. It's always interesting when we can go back and look at the chart and really take a look at things and identify them and see what they are. There's another part of a bone. They're relatively not broken. Most of the bones and pieces that we're finding are pretty much intact. Very efficient way of protecting the owl's stomach from whatever it can't process. And I'm going to continue to dissect this. Basically, I'm going to put this all into kind of a bleach material and take it apart a little bit more so I don't break anything. And then I will show you the process through the pictures and things as I'm working through it online. So that's that. That's the owl pellet for you, and the connection with the elwah dragon. Pull out all those lovely, beautiful bones in there, little tiny bones, and you can see there's like a lot of small little bones in there. A lot of little guys in there, a lot of little bones in there. This owl ate well. Woo! So what's going to happen next is I'm going to take some pictures of this. I'm going to put it in some bleach water for about 48 hours. And then I will put up the instruction of what to identify them for you to take a look and see if you can figure out what our bones are that we found. Right now it's kind of a mess because I'm just still pulling things out of the feathers and the pelt here, of the pellet itself here. So it's going to be kind of difficult to determine what they are until they're cleaned up and ready to look that way. So what's going to happen next is you're going to see a picture that I will take of this particular setting here for you. And then with the picture will be the identification chart. Once they're all cleaned up and ready to go, you'll be able to take a look at them up close and personal and see if you can identify what creatures they've come from. All right. So thanks so much for the opportunity to work with you and show you the wonderful wowie of the elwah dragon, or the owl, aka Thunderbird. I hope you enjoyed our lesson. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.